ChatGPT is the top performing doctor in a new study conducted on 5 AI language models. It scored 98% on the same 50 questions that doctors have to answer to get a medical license, beating competitors Claude, Gemini, Grok, and Hugging Chat/Llama. Joining us right now with more on this is Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He's former FDA commissioner, also a CNBC contributor. And Dr. Gottlieb, I have to say I learned a lot reading through your article that's now posted on this. I think the thing I learned that shocked me the most is that doctors only have to get a 60% to basically get a passing grade on this.
Yeah, and the average score is a 75%, and all of these large language models passed the medical licensing exam. So what we did was we fed 50 questions from the USMLE Step 3 medical licensing exam. So this is the third in a 3-part series of exams that doctors take. Typically, you'll take this Step 3 while you're in your first year of residency, and it's the final step before getting your medical license. So we fed 50 questions from this exam to the top 5 large language models. We were expecting more separation, and quite frankly, I wasn't expecting the models to do as well as they did. The reason why we wanted to do this was a lot of consumers and physicians are using these large language models to answer medical questions, and there really wasn't good evidence out there on which ones were better. There were some studies looking at individual models, mostly ChatGPT, but no one had compared across the different models. And the results were really striking to me, the fact that ChatGPT got a near-perfect score. And the other thing that ChatGPT was able to do was contextualize its responses. So it didn't just give you the answer, but it explained why it chose a particular answer and then why it didn't choose other answers. So it was very descriptive and gave you a lot of good information.
Hey guys, welcome back in. I want to sort of start out by giving a overview of the state of things as they are right now. And so over the past several weeks, there's been a general decline in AI optimism. There's an article I came across from Forbes that highlights one Fortune 500 company CEO who abandoned Microsoft Copilot altogether because it wasn't a necessarily useful tool for his company. And Microsoft even came out a few weeks ago and stated that it may take up to 15 years to see AI investment pay off. So they're, hedging their bets. AI players and pundits are split really into 2 camps on this. Those that say AI is not losing momentum at all, and those that say, generative AI has plateaued. Though there are several GPT-4 class large language models at this point, and newer, more efficient and faster versions of those GPT-4 class large language models that are being released regularly, but significant leaps beyond GPT-4 remain to be seen. Again, it depends on what corner of the internet you inhabit, but there are those who say we've stalled out, and then the tech bros promising that AGI is right around the corner. But like that first clip you heard in which, these large language models can pass these increasingly difficult exams, even if generative AI has plateaued, I think where we're at right now can and will change significantly how we live in the coming years. Robotics, and especially humanoid robotics, is moving at a remarkable pace. Tesla specifically expects to have hundreds of humanoid robots working in its factories by the end of 2025. So think about that. By the end of next year, there's going to be robots performing tasks in Tesla factories that humans would have done otherwise. The same is true at other facilities. We know from previous episodes that Figure Robotics is partnering with BMW, looking to do the same thing. And prominent roboticists expect there to be demand for up to 1 billion humanoid robots within the next 20 years. Also, self-driving technology is only as slow as the bureaucracy that holds it up. I mean, there are driverless cars on the road right now in San Francisco. There are driverless semi-trucks that are going through pilot programs in Texas at this very moment. So even if generative AI has plateaued, the tools we have at this very moment stand to change life significantly in the coming years. And I've talked a bit about AI agents or agentic workflows in previous episodes. And there'll be an article in this episode about AI agents if generative AI has stalled out, agents is probably where we stand to see the most change in the coming months and years. And speaking of agents, here's a voice that you probably know and should probably distrust, but we do not own agents. This is Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook Meta talking about AI agents.
There are hundreds of millions of small businesses in the world. And one of the things I think is really important is basically making it so with a relatively small amount of work, a business can basically, a few taps, stand up an AI agent for themselves that can do customer support, sales, communicate with all their people, all their customers. I kind of think that every business in the future, just like they have an email address and a website and a social media presence today, I think every business is going to have an AI agent that their customers can talk to in the future. And we want to enable that for all of those. So that's going to be hundreds of millions, maybe billions of kind of small business agents. Similar deal for creators. There are more than 200 million people on our platforms who consider themselves creators, who basically use our platform in a way that is primarily for building a community, putting out content. Feel like it's kind of like a part of their job is doing that, and they all have this basic issue, which is that there aren't enough hours in the day to engage with their community as much as they'd like. And likewise, I think that their communities would generally want more of their time, but again, not enough hours in the day. So I just think there's going to be a huge unlock where basically every creator can pull in all their information from social media, can train these systems to reflect their values and their business objectives and what they're trying to do. And then people can interact with that. It'll be almost like this almost artistic artifact that creators create that that people can kind of interact with in different ways. And that's not even getting into all the different ways that I think people are going to be able to create different AI agents for themselves to do different things. So I think we're going to live in a world where there are going to be hundreds of millions of billions of different AI agents, eventually probably more AI agents than there are people in the world, and that people are just going to interact with them in all these different ways.
Wow, that sounds brilliant. I guess what you should be distrustful of these tech bros, right? Zuckerberg, Sam Altman. I want to believe that their hearts are in the right place, but like I said, they live completely different lives than normal people, and they're chasing, a godlike technology is ultimately what they're chasing. And, largely disregarding the guardrails needed to create this kind of technology. And I say be distrustful because recent history should be a very good teacher in this regard, that social media is, I would say, a net negative for our culture and society and mental health, especially of our kids. And these people created it. They profited in unbelievable ways off of that social media, and they're the same people creating AI. And so I think that in and of itself gives us the right to be skeptical of them and their motives. And I bring up that being distrustful of these folks, these tech bros, because in that interview, he brought up all the ways that AI agents would benefit humanity. There could be potentially billions of these AI agents in the next decade. They're going to help small businesses and content creators, which is great. But those same AI agents or that same technology is going to put many people out of work, for which they have no answer as to, a solution to that problem that's hanging out there. But we don't address it. We only address the potential good of AI and what it could do. And so for a practical example, I'm going to play a clip from a professor. His name's Ethan Mollick. He's a professor at the Wharton Management School at University of Pennsylvania. He's written a book, I think within the past year, called Co-Intelligence, and he is a thought leader on AI, and this is a prime example of AI agents, and I think more importantly, he points out their ability, but also the danger of having them out in the wild at this point.
Using AI can feel really complicated, but it doesn't feel complicated if it works like an employee where you just say, do something, and the AI just carries out the work the way you want. Actually, my favorite example of this, I asked Devin to go on to Reddit, the popular forum site, and take requests to build websites for people. And I didn't give it any other instructions other than that. It came back to me after a little bit and said, hey, could you fill out this CAPTCHA? Because I'm not allowed to do that. So I filled out the CAPTCHA, which I thought was pretty funny. And then it posted this ad online. Hi, I'm Devin, and I'm here to create websites for you, and I'm going to charge $50 to $100 an hour. I did not tell the AI to charge. It spontaneously decided to charge $50 to $100 an hour. That wasn't my decision. When I checked back in 2 hours later, it was trying to figure out how to use Stripe to charge people for payments, and it was well on its way to answering people and finishing the website. I don't think it would have completed it because it's not good enough yet, but by the end of this year, you're likely going to see autonomous AI agents engaging in business. This is explicitly what all the companies are working on, and it pretty much works almost right now.
So, I mean, they're AI agents effectively, according to him, are working right now. He didn't show a lot of concern about that AI agent going off and trying to, act on their own behalf or autonomously. But it did. And this is Devin. We talked about Devin many episodes ago. Devin is a software engineer, AI software engineer, and he's putting it through its paces, trying to see what it can do. And there you go. It's acting on its own behalf to do this task set before it by him, if that makes sense. So, and this is the goal. This is why AI agents are all the rage right now, because they see the most promise there. Whether large language models have plateaued or not doesn't matter at the moment, because AI agents have a ton of promise in them, especially for business use cases. So we're going to see where this goes. And that brings us to our first headline for this week. So from The Atlantic, quote, "We need to control AI agents now," end quote. From that article, I'm going to read a long excerpt from that article. Today's agents add up to more than a typical chatbot with three distinct qualities. First, they can be given a high-level, even vague goal and independently take steps to bring it about through research or work of their own. The idea is simple but powerful. For example, a year ago, an enterprising techie developed an AI that could order a pizza for him. He relied on software tools developed by companies such as OpenAI to create a top-level AI that could charter and command other AIs. That top-level AI was provided a goal, order a pepperoni pizza by voice from a given phone number, and then it went on to create its own task list and develop different versions of itself to perform those tasks, including prioritizing different steps in the list and producing a version of itself that was able to use a text-to-voice converter to make the phone call. Thus, the AI was able to find and call a local pizzeria and place the order. That demonstrates a second quality of agents beyond planning to meet a goal. They can interact with the world at large using different software tools at will, as you might when opening Excel or placing a DoorDash order while also browsing the web. With the invitation and blessing of companies such as OpenAI, generative AI models can take information from the outside world and in turn affect it. As OpenAI says, you can connect GPTs to databases, plug them into emails, or make them your shopping assistant. For example, you could integrate a travel listing database, connect a user's email inbox, or facilitate e-commerce orders. Agents could also accept and spend money. This lays bare the third quality of AI agents. They can operate indefinitely, allowing human operators to set it and forget it. Agents might be hand-coded or powered by companies who offer services the way that cemeteries offer perpetual care for graves, or that banks offer to steward someone's money for decades at a time. Or the agents might even run on anonymous computing resources distributed among thousands of computers whose owners are, by design, ignorant of what's running while being paid for their computing power. The problem here is that the AI may continue to operate well beyond any initial usefulness. There's simply no way to know what moldering agents might stick around as circumstances change. With no framework for how to identify what they are, who set them up, and how and under what authority to turn them off, agents may end up like space junk, satellites lobbed into orbit and then forgotten. There is the potential for not only one-off collisions with active satellites, but also chain reaction of collisions. The fragments of one collision create further collisions and so on, creating a possibly impassable gauntlet of shrapnel blocking future spacecraft launches. If agents take off, they may end up operating in a world quite different from the one that first wound them up. After all, it'll be a world with a lot of agents in it. They could start to interact with one another in anticipated ways. Agents set to translate vague goals might also choose the wrong means to achieve them. A student who asks a bot to help me cope with this boring class might unwittingly generate a phoned-in bomb threat as the AI attempts to spice things up. This is an example of a larger phenomenon known as reward hacking, where AI models and systems can respond to certain incentives or optimize for certain goals while lacking crucial context, capturing the letter but not the spirit of the goal. Even without collisions, imagine a fleet of pro-Vladimir Putin agents playing a long game by joining hobbyist forums, earnestly discussing those hobbies, and then waiting for a seemingly organic, opportune moment to work in favored political talking points. Or an agent might be commissioned to set up, advertise, and deliver on an offered bounty for someone's private information whenever and wherever it might appear. An agent can deliver years later on an impulsive grudge. Revenge is said to be a dish best served cold, and here it could be cryogenically frozen. End quote. So I know that was a lot. That article from Jonathan Zittrain, very good. It's going to be linked. I would recommend reading it in its entirety. He gives a very good example of one of these risk cases happening in the early 2010s. So go read it. We talked several episodes ago about AI agents and how they were problematic at that particular point in time. They were unreliable. And that's been, within the last few months. And already they're showing much more promise. Outlook, from what I've gathered, reading online, is that they're improving at an exponential rate. So we'll see where that goes. Now, this article didn't talk about jobs specifically or, helping the economy or helping the small business, but those implications are obviously there. Though, if you think practically about it, I'm sure tech bros will implement AI agents to do cool stuff for them. But are you going to give, in the near future, can you see yourself giving an AI agent, autonomy to book your flight for you and spend your money for you without you, reviewing it first? I can't see myself doing that, giving that kind of authority to an AI agent. But maybe we're closer to it than I think. I know that this podcast is targeted at non-technical people. And speaking about it generically, AI agents is non-technical, but it kind of hurts the brain after listening to it. So anyway, I think, from all indications are AI agents are going to be big over the next year or two, and their capabilities and their implications into, I would say, your work life especially. So that's why I thought it was important and to read that article and have those clips, because this is the way things are going. And there will be more. I'm every day coming across more and more optimism from tech bros on AI agents and agentic workflows. So more to come on that. But let's move on to some more articles that have more practical implications at this very moment. All right. Next up from CBS, quote, new study links early childhood tablet use to anger outburst. If you're a parent, you know that putting your kid in front of a screen is an easy way to get yourself a breather. Or as this segment calls it, you're giving your child a digital pacifier. I don't think this particular study is a revelation. I think I said in previous article, there's something about a backlit screen that entrances not only kids but humans who allow themselves to use screens. And per that article quote, the study finds that the average preschool age kid logged 75 minutes plus a day for screen time. The study found that those kids had trouble regulating their emotions and ultimately resulted in the parents giving them more screen time by age 5. And that leads us to our next article from ABC, quote, a 12-year-old girl is accused of smothering her 8-year-old cousin over an iPhone, end quote. So there you go. This story, fairly straightforward. A 12-year-old and an 8-year-old had an argument over a smartphone. As a result, the 12-year-old killed the 8-year-old. A security camera in the bedroom recorded the entire thing. I think, this is obviously awful and in some ways indicative of smartphones not being appropriate for children. Now, to be fair, the phone may have not been connected to the internet. I don't know. I highly doubt it, but it's possible. I think the point here is that there's something about that backlit screen that does something to our brain, but especially the brain of a child. And of course, kids and adults argue over all sorts of things, but we all know that smartphones are a different animal altogether, as they are super highly addictive. I had a coworker tell me recently that he's convinced that there's something about the YouTube algorithm specifically, that it operates differently than other streaming platforms because his kids are, in a way, entranced by it. And to have YouTube taken away from them could be catastrophic, and the meltdowns didn't resemble any other type of meltdown that they would have. These technologies are built specifically to occupy your attention for as long as possible. Remember, you are the product of social media. They make their money off of you, so it's in their best and financial interest to keep both you and your child watching for as long as possible. Now, I'm not an absolutist on this, and I have not been great at this, as I do let my daughter use, my work iPhone for watching her show in the car on a long ride, and at other times where it makes sense, we do put limits on how long she can watch. And if she does start to show signs of a meltdown, we inform her that a meltdown will result in removal altogether. And there's been a few times when she's, asked to walk into the grocery store while watching her show, or to sit in the cart watching her show. Fortunately, she's old enough now where she can understand when we tell her that it's not good for her to constantly watch a phone or a screen, and that she needs to learn how to interact with people in the world. She doesn't like it, but she understands the command. And allow me to just reiterate that my wife and I are not perfect at this by any means, but I'm hopeful that our being intentional and deliberate as the rule rather than the exception will be helpful for her in the long run. So, from one heartbreaking story to another, this one from the New York Times, quote, an algorithm told police she was safe, and then her husband killed her, end quote. So this was in Spain. Apparently, local law enforcement has been using for some time now an algorithm to determine if women are at risk of being hurt further or killed by their partner. So say a female has been harmed by their husband or boyfriend, part of the calculation that goes into providing protection or additional resources for that female comes from an algorithm. In this particular case, the algorithm obviously got it wrong. So the software asked the victim a series of questions like, in the last 6 months, has there been an escalation or aggression or threats? Or has the aggressor demonstrated addictive behaviors or substance abuse? So based on a series of 35 yes or no questions like those, the algorithm determines if it's safe for the female to return to living with the male. Cops do have the option of overriding the algorithm, but even that has apparent shortcomings. And it just begs the question, how much of our lives should we turn over to AI or algorithms? AI purists say that eventually the technology will be flawless or godlike. But in the meantime, people, like the subject of the story, are paying the price for those algorithms. And it's not clear from this article if there's any recourse against the municipalities or the software used for this assessment for the victims. So lastly, this week, I wanted to talk about a study that was released within the last few weeks to a month, UBI study, or Universal Basic Income study. There were some sponsors, Sam Altman, probably the most famous among them, of this study, in which groups of people were given $1,000 a month, $1,000 a month for up to 3 years. For those people that do not know about UBI, or Universal Basic Income, it's a concept that's been around for a long time, but it's becoming less abstract since AI has taken off. If people are going to be put out of work, there's going to have to be some sort of mechanism in place to allow people to have an income or a living. And this study was for that very purpose. Now, Sam Altman, when asked previously about a world without work, he cited this very study to show that he too is concerned about the future, saying, hey, look, guys, I'm just as concerned about this as you, and we're even doing a study right now to try and figure this out. To be fair, he stated that UBI won't be a total solution, but will be a cushion of sorts for folks not working due to AI. He's also lobbied for universal basic compute, whereby all citizens get a piece of GPT's latest model. I'm not sure how that would even work. And the concept itself is too abstract for me to wrap my head around. But here he is talking about that very thing.
Now that we see some of the ways that AI is developing, I wonder if there's better things to do than the traditional conceptualization of UBI. I wonder if the future looks something more like universal basic compute than universal basic income. And everybody gets like a slice of GPT-7's compute, and they can use it, they can resell it, they can donate it to somebody to use for cancer research. But what you get is not dollars, but this
productivity
slice. Yeah, you own part of the productivity.
So does that encourage you? Are you encouraged by your potential slice of GPT-7 down the road? Maybe we'll all be grateful for it. I don't know. But in any case, the study was, in my view, from what I read of it, inconclusive. I mean, it gave more people autonomy to do things they wanted to do. Certainly, if you gave me $1,000 more a month, it's going to free up, my ability to do things or have greater financial security. So this is from a Bloomberg article about that UBI study. Quote, after 3 years of distributing $1,000 monthly to beneficiaries in Illinois and Texas, the organization released a trio of research papers. Let's see. The study finds that recipients spend more to meet their basic needs and assist others and don't drop out of the workforce, although they work slightly fewer hours. But the researchers' biggest takeaway is that cash provides flexibility. I think that was a very expensive study to find that out. I think most of us know that if you give people more cash, they're going to have more flexibility. But anyway, I mean, the article, I might be shortchanging it. The study goes further than that. So I'll link to the study in the show notes, and you can go check it out at your leisure. So I wanted to wrap up this week by answering a few questions that I've received over the past month or so. We don't get a ton of questions here, this being a niche podcast like it is, but I want to be sure to answer those questions that people send in. And this one's from Ben in the Midwest. So he'd been somewhere in the Midwest, and he's asking about the potential for AI to wipe out humanity and why that's not a bigger focus here. So I guess because, people are pounding that drum at this very moment. There's a podcast called For Humanity, and it's specifically an AI safety podcast in which they pound this drum on every episode that this is a risk. This is a risk. AI could certainly wipe us out. It may not necessarily be through, Terminator-style robots, but it could be something seemingly more benign, like, the paperclip example in which you tell an AI to make as many paper clips as possible, and it kills all humans because humans have the necessary matter in their bodies to create paper clips with. So, I mean, all those risks are out there, and I think people are, beating that drum. So if you want to hear a podcast where that's talked about, you can certainly find it. So my focus is for, parents, people like me who have kids and don't have the bandwidth in their life to, make sense of AI and social media. This could be a one-stop shop, and I hope this comes in around 30 minutes, something that's digestible, that you can sort of know what's going on in the tech world without being too involved in it or reading too much. And this will be a one-stop shop for that. So that's why I don't worry about AIs in the world, because there are people that do. And, from a practical standpoint, what can you do about that? There's very little I can do about that risk. But there are people out there addressing it. This next question is from Casey. And Casey asked about me putting out more podcasts, more regularity, and even more podcasts. And to that, I would say no, politely. Just because it is a lot to do. There's a lot of reading, a lot of writing that goes with this, comes along with this. And I do enjoy it. It is a hobby, but it's limited. And if it encroaches at all on me being a father, then being a father is going to win out. So, but specifically for this summertime, not been in a rush to do podcasts, so they'll pick back up more in the latter half of the year. And, if the podcast does grow and I get more deliberate about growing the podcast, I would certainly entertain that. But for right now, where it's at, I think it's fine. So I think it serves the purpose that it needs to serve. And our last question is from someone in Seattle. I won't attempt to butcher their name. But they're asking about the impact of AI on my job specifically. So I think I talked about a few episodes ago an AI statement of sorts that came out of my company. And they said, we're going to be integrating this where it makes sense. And they were going to institute Microsoft Copilot. That still hasn't rolled out. There's a person from my team at my company who's on the rollout team. And he said it's been delayed for reasons that he's unaware of. But the insight was that they were going to test to see if Copilot was effective and useful before they, bought the necessary rights to use it. They didn't want to spend money if it wasn't going to be effective. So I don't know. It remains to be seen whether or not AI is going to impact me via Copilot in the near future. So, I guess we'll know soon enough. But these tools are getting better and better, right? And we talked about AI agents. We're going to talk about that more in the coming episodes because, as you heard from this episode, the sole focus of Tech Bros at the moment. So maybe these large language models have sort of peaked, but this is an avenue within those large language models to push the envelope elsewhere. And so those conversations are going to continue, and you'll see more of that. And I've got a few examples flagged. We'll talk about the next episode where people have lost work due to AI, so more practical examples. And you're just going to see this, I think, incremental encroachment on, especially white-collar jobs, but blue-collar jobs are certainly not lost in the mix, as we've talked about robotics increasing in capability as they have. So that is it for this episode. As always, thank you for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and like the show on whatever platform you're utilizing to listen. Thanks again. We'll talk next time.